The sun was low on the horizon, painting the rugged mesas of New Mexico in a fierce gold. Dust swirled along the worn dirt roads, and the wind carried a chill that hinted at the approaching night. At the edge of the small frontier town of Red Willow, a lone figure stood by the wooden fence of the trading post. Her name was Evelyn Hartley, a striking woman of 30, whose sharp green eyes carried both pride and sorrow, though few knew the latter. She watched the horizon with a restless gaze, her heart beating with a mixture of anticipation and dread from the shadows of the canyon. A lone rider appeared, his horse kicking up clouds of dust with every galloping step. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried the unmistakable presence of someone who had lived free under the desert sky. His skin was bronzed, marked by the harsh sun, and his long black hair, streaked with silver at the edges, flowed behind him. The feather in his hair and the painted marks across his face identified him instantly. He was Takoda, an Apache warrior of great renown, known for his courage and unwavering honor. Evelyn's heart skipped. She had seen Takoda many times at the edge of town, trading, speaking to the townsfolk, but today was different. Today, he had ridden here with a purpose she had long suspected but never wanted to face. He stopped a few paces from her, dismounting with the quiet grace of a predator and a warrior. The soft leather of his moccasins crunched on the dry earth. He studied her with eyes that seemed to pierce through her very soul. "Evelyn," he said, his voice deep and calm, carrying a weight of something older than the canyons themselves. "I have come to ask what I should have asked long ago." Evelyn stiffened. She had known this moment would come, and yet, seeing him now, her chest tightened with something she refused to name. "Takoda," she replied softly, I know what you mean." He took a step closer. "I wish to be with you, to marry, to share life and burden, joy and sorrow side by side." Her gaze dropped to the dirt. The townsfolk who happened to be passing paused to watch, sensing the gravity of the moment. A hush settled over the trading post. "I cannot," Evelyn whispered, shaking her head slowly. "You must understand. I am not meant for this life. She swallowed hard, fighting tears she refused to let show. "I cannot leave my family, my home. I cannot abandon the life I have built here." Takoda's expression did not change, but the silence that followed spoke volumes. He had expected her refusal, had perhaps even prepared for it. Yet there was a flicker of something, pain, maybe betrayal, maybe love that crossed his face before he forced it away. "I see," he said finally, voice low but unwavering. "Then I will not stay where I am not wanted. But know this, Evelyn Hartley, my heart will always remember this day, and so will the land we walk upon." With that, he turned, swinging himself onto his horse. Evelyn watched as he rode away, the setting sun catching the glint of feathers and beads in his hair, leaving a cloud of dust and a hollow ache behind him. For days afterward, Evelyn felt the weight of her choice pressing on her chest. The town whispered about the Apache warrior and the woman who had rejected him, speculating whether she had acted out of prudence, fear, or some deeper pride. She could not answer them, could not even answer herself. The nights were long, filled with the echo of hooves in her mind and the memory of Takoda's steadfast eyes. Yet life in Red Willow went on. Evelyn threw herself into her work at the trading post, attending to customers, managing the small household she had inherited from her late father. Still, every evening, when the wind stirred the canyons and carried the scent of sagebrush, she would pause at the edge of town, looking for a figure that she feared and longed for all at once. Little did she know that the story was far from over, that the desert held secrets, and the paths she had closed off would not remain closed forever. That one day, long after she had convinced herself she had made the right choice, fate would force her to reckon with the man she had rejected, and the life she had tried so desperately to cling to, and somewhere beyond the hills. Takoda rode on, his heart unshaken but his soul heavy, carrying a question that would not leave him. Had she made the right choice? Or had both of their lives been irreversibly altered by a single moment of fear? The wind howled through Red Willow, carrying whispers of dust, sorrow, and a promise that their paths would cross again. 2 years had passed since Takoda's departure, yet the memory of that day lingered in Evelyn Hartley's mind like a stubborn shadow. Life in Red Willow had continued, but it had not been easy. The small trading post she ran remained her anchor, yet each day felt heavier than the last. Rumors spread through town of hardship, and Evelyn could no longer hide the hollow ache in her eyes. She had changed. The pride and resolve that had once defined her now seemed brittle, almost fragile. Her emerald eyes, once sharp and lively, were dulled by nights of sleepless sorrow. She had returned to the town she had tried to make her home, but she carried with her invisible burdens loss, disappointment, and a loneliness that no amount of daily toil could erase. It was late afternoon when Evelyn crested the ridge overlooking Red Willow. Her worn boots scuffed against the dry earth, and her dark coat flapped against her shoulders in the desert wind. As she approached the town, she noticed the familiar trading post, the same dusty streets, and the faint outlines of buildings she had once walked past with purpose. But everything looked smaller somehow, as if the town itself had grown weary in her absence. Evelyn paused, her gaze catching a figure in the distance. A man was standing by the edge of the trading post, watching the horizon. She froze. The wind carried faint echoes of hooves, and for a brief moment she thought it was a trick of her imagination. But no, her heart quickened, a cold, sharp ache spreading through her chest. It was Takoda. Time had not diminished his presence. If anything, it had sharpened it. He had grown even more imposing, his muscles taut and defined, his long black hair catching the sunlight as it flowed freely behind him. The tribal jewelry he wore glinted in the fading light, beads and feathers moving softly with the breeze. His eyes, those deep, dark eyes that had once held only quiet patience, now carried a flicker of something more complex: curiosity, caution, and an undercurrent of sorrow that mirrored her own. Evelyn wanted to turn and run, to flee from the waves of emotion threatening to overwhelm her, but her boots remained rooted in the dirt. She stepped forward, each movement deliberate, though her heart pounded violently in her chest. "Takoda," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. He turned slowly, as if sensing her presence long before she had spoken. His gaze met hers, and the silence stretched between them like a canyon wide and deep. Neither moved, yet the world seemed to shrink around them. The dusty street, the quiet town, the distant mesas, everything faded except the space they now occupied. "You've returned," he said finally, his voice calm but layered with something she could not name. Not anger, not relief, but expectation. "Yes," Evelyn said, struggling to steady herself. "I had to come back. There is so much I need to face. Things I cannot explain." Takoda's expression softened just slightly. He gestured toward a shaded bench by the trading post. "Sit, tell me. Or perhaps let the silence speak first." Evelyn lowered herself slowly, the wooden bench creaking under her weight. She looked down at her hands, which trembled faintly, and then back up at him. The town seemed to hold its breath, as if even the wind waited for her story. "I have lost everything I thought would make me happy," she began, her voice trembling with the weight of 2 years of sorrow. "Opportunities, friends. A life I believed I controlled. And yet none of it filled the void I felt inside. I tried to stay away, to protect myself, but the emptiness only grew. And now?" Her throat tightened. "Now I realize what I left behind." Takoda remained silent, his gaze unwavering, his presence steady and commanding. His hand rested on the hilt of a knife at his belt, though he did not reach for it. He did not need to. His silence was both comfort and challenge, a reminder of the consequences of choices and the inevitability of reckoning. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, and she turned them away, embarrassed by the rawness of her emotion. "I am not the same woman who refused you," she whispered. "I am. Broken, haunted, and yet, somehow, I have returned to face what I should have never abandoned." For a moment, the wind carried nothing but the quiet hum of tension and history. Then, slowly, Takoda's lips curved, not in a smile, but in the faintest acknowledgment of understanding. "You have returned," he said again. "The desert does not forgive easily, Evelyn Hartley, nor does it forget. But perhaps there is a path yet for you." Evelyn felt a shiver run through her, a mixture of fear and hope that she could not name. The town around them seemed to fade further, leaving only two figures standing at the edge of memory and destiny. The story was far from over. The past and the present were colliding in ways she could scarcely comprehend. And as the sun dipped below the mesas, casting red willow in a blood-red glow, Evelyn realized that her life and perhaps her very heart would never be the same again. The wind carried a bitter chill that evening, whispering through the narrow streets of red willow like secrets that refused to stay buried. Evelyn Hartley sat silently on the weathered bench outside the trading post, her gaze fixed on the distant mesas, though her mind was far from the horizon. Takoda stood nearby, his muscular frame silhouetted against the dying sun, long black hair dancing in the wind, tribal jewelry glinting faintly. The quiet between them was thick with unsaid words, memories, and unhealed wounds. Evelyn's hands trembled as she clasped them tightly in her lap. 2 years, she murmured, her voice nearly lost in the wind. 2 years I've tried to forget, and yet every day I felt the weight of what I left behind. Takoda's dark eyes remained fixed on her. He did not speak immediately, allowing the desert silence to settle like dust over their shared past. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and steady, yet carrying the depth of years of unspoken emotion. "You have suffered," he said, more as a statement than a question. "The desert marks those who abandon paths that were meant for them." Evelyn flinched at the accuracy of his words. She had carried a secret pain, one she had hidden even from herself, a suffering that had shaped the woman who now sat before him. "I thought I could control my life," she whispered, "but I was naive. I thought rejecting you would save me, would keep me safe. But I was wrong. Everything I touched turned cold. Friendships faltered, business opportunities vanished, and at night, I realized the life I wanted was the one I walked away from." Takoda's expression softened, the faintest trace of sorrow flickering across his stoic features. He took a step closer, yet kept a respectful distance. "Evelyn Hartley," he said carefully, "you have returned, but the woman before me is not the one I once knew. You carry shadows that did not belong to you, burdens that you cannot simply discard." Her lips trembled, and she swallowed hard. "I've lost everything. Everything that once gave me meaning. My home, my work, my pride. It all feels hollow without you. I thought I could survive, that I could be strong. But I am not strong enough to face this alone." Takoda's eyes softened further, though the strength in his stance never wavered. He removed a small pendant from around his neck, a simple carved piece of wood strung with leather. "This stayed with me all these years," he said, holding it out. "A reminder of what could have been and what might yet be, if fate allows it." Evelyn's fingers hovered over the pendant, but she did not take it immediately. Her chest ached with a mix of guilt, sorrow, and longing. I don't deserve this," she whispered. "After everything I did, after rejecting you, how can I hope to mend what I broke?" Takoda's expression remained unreadable, yet the desert air seemed to hum with unspoken understanding. "Life is not about deserving," he said finally. "It is about enduring. And enduring sometimes leads us back to the very moments we tried to escape." For a long moment, neither spoke. The town around them had grown quiet. The faint sounds of a distant windmill and the occasional clatter from the trading post punctuating the stillness. Evelyn finally allowed herself to look up, meeting his gaze fully for the first time since she had returned. "Takoda, I am not the same woman who turned you away," she said, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. "I am scarred, broken, and yet I am here because I have nowhere else to go. And perhaps because a part of me has always belonged to you." Takoda's jaw tightened slightly, a shadow of old hurt crossing his features, but he did not speak. Instead, he extended a hand, an invitation as much as a test. "Then walk with me," he said quietly. "Show me the woman you have become. Let the past remain a memory, and let the desert decide what comes next." Evelyn hesitated, the weight of her sorrow pressing down, but slowly she placed her hand in his. The warmth of his skin and the steady strength of his grip sent a shiver through her. For the first time in 2 long years, she felt the possibility of something beyond the pain she had carried, beyond the choices she had made. The sun dipped fully below the mesas, casting red willow in deep crimson shadows. Dust swirled around them as they walked side by side, their steps echoing in the silence. The past was heavy, the sorrow was real, but as the night settled over the town, Evelyn realized that the first step toward redemption and perhaps even love was simply to keep moving forward. The desert whispered around them, promising both challenge and solace. And for the first time, Evelyn allowed herself to hope that the paths of her life and her heart might yet converge with Takoda's in ways that neither of them could have imagined. Night had fallen over Red Willow, and the town seemed to huddle under a blanket of darkness, the kind that made every shadow look like it had a story to tell. Lanterns flickered weakly along the wooden streets, casting trembling light across the dusty ground. Evelyn Hartley walked beside Takoda, their hands still loosely clasped, the warmth of his presence a quiet reassurance in the chill desert air. "You've changed," Takoda said softly, breaking the silence. His voice carried the weight of observation, as though he could see the years of suffering etched into her very being. Evelyn let out a faint, bitter laugh. "I think life has changed me in ways I cannot even begin to understand. 2 years, and everything I thought mattered has crumbled. I'm not sure there is anything left of the woman you once knew." Takoda's eyes, dark and unwavering, studied her closely. "The woman I once knew," he said, "was proud and fearless. She made choices that frightened even herself. But pride is not weakness, Evelyn. It is the compass that guides the heart, even when it falters." She flinched, as though his words struck deeper than any lash of the wind. "I rejected you," she whispered, almost ashamedly. "I walked away from something pure, something that could have given my life meaning. And in doing so, I've wandered through years of emptiness and regret. Every day I wondered if I could ever return and face you." Takoda did not speak for a long moment. The night air hummed with the faint rustle of desert grass and the distant cry of an owl. Then, he finally said, "Redemption is not found in fleeing. It is found in the courage to face what has been lost. You have returned, Evelyn Hartley. That is the first step." She nodded, her eyes welling with tears she refused to let fall. "There are things I cannot tell anyone. Not even you," she admitted. "I've seen the fragility of life. People I trusted, gone. Opportunities I thought I had, vanished. And yet, there's something I need from you, perhaps more than I can name." Takoda's expression softened slightly. the stoic mask slipping just enough to reveal the depth of his concern. "Speak," he urged gently. Evelyn took a deep breath. "I've come back because the emptiness is unbearable. I cannot escape it, no matter how hard I try. I thought pride and stubbornness would protect me, but they have only isolated me. I need guidance. I need strength. And perhaps I need the man I foolishly turned away." A subtle tension passed between them, the kind that comes when two people share truths that are too heavy to carry alone. Takoda reached for the pendant he had given her, holding it between them. "This was never merely a token," he said quietly. "It is a reminder that our choices shape more than our own lives. They ripple across time and hearts alike. What you seek cannot be given lightly. It must be earned, understood, and accepted." Evelyn looked at him, the flickering lantern light reflecting in her green eyes, revealing vulnerability and desperation intertwined. "I am ready," she said firmly, though her voice trembled. "I am ready to face whatever comes, if you will help me bear it." He studied her silently, as if weighing the truth of her words against the 2 years of solitude, suffering, and pride. Finally, he nodded. "Then you must understand, Evelyn Hartley," he said, his voice resolute, "that the path ahead is not easy. The desert does not forgive the faint of heart, and life will demand honesty, courage, and sacrifice. You will need to confront not only your regrets, but also the forces that shape them." Evelyn swallowed hard, her pulse racing. "I will," she whispered. "I have nowhere else to go, Takoda, and I am ready to follow wherever you lead." He extended his hand, this time not merely as an invitation, but as a declaration of shared purpose. "Then we begin," he said. Together. The two of them walked back into the heart of Red Willow, the shadows of the town stretching around them like silent witnesses. The streets were empty, yet the weight of the night seemed alive, as if the town itself knew that a reckoning had begun. And as the wind swept through the wooden buildings and dusty alleyways, Evelyn felt, for the first time in years, a spark of hope. The past had been cruel, and sorrow had carved deep lines into her spirit. But perhaps, just perhaps, this night marked the beginning of a journey where redemption, understanding, and even love might intertwine in ways she had long thought impossible. The desert whispered around them, carrying with it the promise of secrets yet to be revealed and trials yet to be faced. And together they would step into the unknown, bound not by pride or fear, but by the fragile, enduring power of hope. The morning sun rose over Red Willow, casting harsh, golden light across the wooden buildings and dusty streets. Evelyn Hartley walked beside Takoda, their steps deliberate, yet the weight of the past pressed heavily upon her. 2 years of wandering, sorrow, and regret had brought her back. But the town had not forgotten, nor had the choices she had made. The townsfolk were already stirring, glancing curiously at the pair as they approached the main square. Whispers spread quickly. The woman who rejected the Apache. She's back. Evelyn could feel their eyes like a physical force, probing, judging, questioning. Takoda, ever composed, held his head high, shoulders squared, muscles tense beneath the sun, his presence commanding yet calm. Evelyn swallowed hard. "They won't forgive me," she murmured, her voice tight with anxiety. "Not for leaving. Not for what happened after." Takoda glanced at her, long black hair catching the morning light, tribal jewelry shimmering faintly. "The past is like the desert," he said quietly. "It holds scars, but it also holds lessons. They may whisper, they may judge. But what matters is the path you take now." Evelyn nodded, drawing courage from his words. "Then let's face it." They moved toward the trading post, where Evelyn had once managed affairs with pride and competence. Now, the place seemed smaller, more fragile, as if echoing the fragility she felt inside. She entered first, her eyes scanning the familiar surroundings, then turning to Takoda. "This is where it all began," she said softly. A man stepped forward from the shadows of the doorway. Silas Green, a local merchant who had once been a friend, now looked at her with suspicion and quiet resentment. "Evelyn Hartley," he said, his voice edged with tension. "I didn't expect to see you back here. After everything. You just show up?" Evelyn's throat tightened. "I've come back because I must," she said firmly, meeting his gaze. "I cannot hide from the past any longer." Takoda stepped forward, his imposing, shirtless frame casting a shadow that seemed to fill the room. Muscles taut beneath the sun-kissed skin, long black hair flowing, tribal jewelry glinting, he was a living testament to strength and resolve. "She speaks truth," he said, his deep voice calm but resonant. "The past cannot be changed, but the present. The present can be faced with honesty." The room fell silent. The townsfolk, now gathered, watched the confrontation unfold like a play written by fate. Whispers carried, "The Apache warrior stands with her. She has returned, and he is here." Evelyn took a deep breath. "I made mistakes," she admitted, her voice steady but raw. "I turned away from Takoda, from what could have been. Because I was afraid, because I thought I could control my life alone. I was wrong. I see now that strength does not come from pride or fear. Strength comes from facing the truth, and I am ready to face mine." Silas's expression softened slightly, though suspicion lingered. 2 years. You've been gone, and now you come back, speaking of truths and facing the past. Why should we believe you've changed? Evelyn's gaze met Takoda's for a brief moment. His dark eyes held hers with unspoken support. "Because I have no other choice," she said. "I have learned that running away does not save anyone. I have learned that courage is in returning, even when the world is against you. And I am ready to live with the consequences of my choices." Takoda's hand brushed lightly against hers, a quiet gesture of solidarity. "The desert tests all who walk upon it," he said. "It reveals truth. And today, Evelyn Hartley walks with courage." A hush fell over the town. For the first time in 2 long years, Evelyn felt a glimmer of hope tempered by the weight of her past. The townsfolk could whisper, judge, and doubt, but the path she had chosen was clear. She would not hide. She would not flee. And as the sun rose higher over Red Willow, casting long shadows and golden light over the streets, Evelyn understood that the journey toward redemption and perhaps reconciliation with Takoda was just beginning. The desert had tested her, sorrow had shaped her, and the past had pursued her relentlessly. Yet now, for the first time, she was ready to confront it all. Takoda's steady presence at her side reminded her that no matter how heavy the past, there was strength in facing it together. And as the wind swept through the dusty streets, carrying whispers of the desert and the promise of change, Evelyn felt a quiet determination take root. This was no longer just a return. This was the start of a reckoning. The desert sun hung high over Red Willow, casting harsh light across the town's wooden buildings. Dust swirled along the streets, carrying whispers of the past and promises of confrontation. Evelyn Hartley walked beside Takoda, her heart pounding, though she moved with a steadiness she had not felt in years. Today was not just another day, it was the day she would face the consequences of her choices, and the moment where courage would be tested against the unforgiving truth of the desert. Takoda's presence beside her was commanding, yet calm. Muscles defined beneath sun-kissed skin, long black hair catching the light, tribal jewelry glinting faintly, he seemed a force of nature, unyielding and protective. Every step he took was deliberate, every movement a testament to his unshakable strength. Evelyn drew courage from him. Though her mind wrestled with the memories that had haunted her these past 2 years, The townsfolk had gathered once again, their curiosity and judgment palpable in the midday heat. Murmurs ran through the crowd, "She's back," and that Apache warrior is with her. What could have brought them here together? Evelyn felt the weight of their stares, yet she held her head high. This was her moment to reclaim herself, and Takoda's silent support gave her the strength to stand. Figure emerged from the shade of a building, a man from her past. Jeremiah Cole, once a trusted confidant, now a bitter reminder of the life she had lost. His eyes narrowed as he took in her presence and Takoda's formidable figure beside her. "Evelyn Hartley," he said, voice edged with suspicion and accusation, "I hear you've returned, and brought your protector with you. Planning to rewrite history, are we?" Evelyn's gaze met his, steady and unwavering. "I've returned to face the past, Jeremiah," she said. "Not to rewrite it, not to beg forgiveness, but to live truthfully from this moment forward. I've learned that cowardice is not strength, and avoidance is no protection." Jeremiah's lips pressed into a thin line. "Words are easy," he said. "Actions, that's another matter. 2 years of absence leave wounds, Evelyn. Do you think a warrior's presence can shield you from that?" Takoda stepped forward, his shadow stretching across the dust-laden street. Shirtless and imposing, his muscles glinting in the sunlight, long black hair flowing, tribal jewelry shimmering, he radiated an aura of both strength and unspoken menace. "I am not here to shield her from consequences," he said, voice low but firm. "I am here to stand with her, to face the truth of this town, the past that lingers, and whatever trials the desert has in store. The desert does not forgive easily, but it rewards those who endure." Evelyn felt a wave of gratitude and hope swell within her. "I will face it," she said, her voice steady. "Whatever comes, I will not run. I will not hide. I've learned too much to go back to fear." Jeremiah's eyes flicked between them, tension rippling in his stance. For a moment, it seemed as if the air itself held its breath. Then, from the crowd, voices began to rise, some skeptical, some curious, some supportive. The townsfolk, who had once whispered doubts and judgment, now leaned in, sensing that a reckoning was unfolding. Takoda's gaze softened slightly as he looked at Evelyn. "The desert teaches harsh lessons," he said quietly. "It strips away illusions, pride, and fear. It forces the heart to reckon with truth. Today you step into that reckoning, Evelyn Hartley, and you will not face it alone." Evelyn's pulse quickened. She looked around at the town, the dusty streets, the wary yet watchful faces. This was her home, flawed and judgmental, yet still hers. "Then let it come," she said firmly. "I am ready. Whatever truth, whatever trial, I will endure." Takoda nodded, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "Then we walk together," he said, "through shadow, sorrow, and storm. The desert does not forgive the faint of heart, but it honors those who endure." And as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across Red Willow, Evelyn felt a shift within herself. The past was heavy, sorrow had marked her, but the present, her courage, her choices, and the steadfast presence of Takoda promised a path forward. The desert whispered its challenges, its secrets, and its reckoning, yet for the first time in years, Evelyn felt prepared to meet them head-on. The journey toward redemption, understanding, and perhaps even reconciliation had begun in earnest. And as the wind swept through the streets, carrying dust and whispers, Evelyn Hartley knew that whatever the desert demanded, she would face it with Takoda at her side and with the strength she had rediscovered within herself. The late afternoon sun bathed Red Willow in a golden haze, the kind of light that softened the harsh edges of the town yet highlighted every line, every scar left by years of desert wind and human struggle. Evelyn Hartley stood at the edge of the main street, dust rising in lazy swirls around her boots. Takoda was beside her, shirtless, muscles glinting in the warm light, long black hair flowing over his shoulders and tribal jewelry catching the sun like faint sparks of fire. His presence was steady, unyielding, and comforting all at once. The town had gathered again, the murmurs of curious onlookers blending with the creaking of wooden signs and the distant clatter of horse hooves. They had watched Evelyn return, watched her face her past, and now they waited. Perhaps they were waiting for a spectacle, perhaps for a confrontation. But what unfolded was something far more profound. Evelyn took a deep breath, her chest tight with emotion. "I've returned," she began, voice carrying clearly across the square. "I've returned not to beg forgiveness, nor to escape judgment. I've returned because the choices I made 2 years ago have taught me lessons I could not have learned any other way. And today I face the truth of my life, my mistakes, and the man I should never have rejected." Takoda's gaze softened as he looked at her. He had seen her pain, her sorrow, and her courage in these past weeks. "Evelyn Hartley," he said, his deep voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd, "you have endured the desert's trials, the weight of sorrow, and the reckoning of your own heart. You stand here not as a woman broken by fear, but as one strengthened by truth." She met his eyes, the emerald depths reflecting relief, longing, and hope all at once. "Takoda, I am sorry," she whispered. "I am sorry for turning away, for letting fear dictate my choices. I see now that true strength comes not from avoidance, but from facing the life you want, no matter how difficult the path." Takoda stepped closer, his hand brushing hers in a silent gesture of connection and understanding. "There is nothing to forgive, Evelyn," he said quietly. "We are shaped by our choices, yes, but we are also defined by the courage to return, to confront the past, and to embrace what the heart has always known." For a moment, the town fell silent. The only sound the desert wind rustling through wooden buildings and the distant cry of a hawk. The tension that had hung over Red Willow for so long seemed to dissolve, replaced by something fragile and powerful: understanding, reconciliation, and hope. Evelyn's voice trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of her emotions finally finding release. I have no other place I belong to," she admitted. "But with you, I feel as though I have found the home I was searching for all these years." Takoda's dark eyes softened further, the stoicism giving way to quiet warmth. "Then stay," he said simply. "Not because you must, but because this is where your heart belongs. Together we can walk the path forward, unafraid of the desert, unafraid of life, unafraid of love." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. But this time they were not tears of sorrow. They were the release of years of regret, fear, and longing. She nodded, squeezing his hand. "I will walk with you," she said. "Always." A murmur ran through the crowd, a mix of surprise and quiet admiration. The townsfolk who had once whispered judgment now saw a different story, a story of courage, redemption, and the unyielding strength of the human heart. Evelyn and Takoda stood together, shoulder to shoulder, the harsh light of the desert revealing not scars, but resilience. The wind carried with it the scent of sage and the distant sound of hooves on the horizon. It whispered of journeys still to come, challenges yet unseen, but also of hope, connection, and the promise of new beginnings. Evelyn felt the weight of 2 years of sorrow lift slightly, replaced by a profound sense of peace and determination. As the sun sank lower, painting the mesas in shades of fire and shadow, Takoda looked down at Evelyn, his gaze steady and unwavering. "The desert has tested you," he said, voice soft but firm. "It has tested me. But here we stand, stronger than before, ready to face whatever comes next together." Evelyn smiled, the first genuine smile in years, and together they walked down the main street of Red Willow. Dust swirled around them like a blessing, the town's whispers fading into the background. The past had been harsh, the sorrow deep, but they had endured. And in the quiet strength of each other, they had found something enduring: love, redemption, and the courage to begin anew. The desert sun dipped behind the mesas, casting long shadows that merged with the golden glow of hope. Evelyn Hartley and Takoda, the Apache warrior, had returned not just to face the past, but to embrace the future together.